All right, folks, what's going on? Grab a pen and jot this down. Today, we're going to quickly talk about the world of Gemini, AI, LLMs, and much more. Obviously, this world is evolving pretty quickly. I think there have been some tremendous changes across the entire ecosystem. I probably have not made an update since I went to Google I/O, which was pretty meaningful, and have gone in through the Gemini Enterprise partnership. I'm definitely a Gemini enterprise or Gemini consumer, Gemini app, everything on the Google ecosystem. There are a few major reasons for it. I think they're contrarian from the typical standpoint of what others do, but I think they're important. So, obviously, and I think in the last 10 days, we've seen a lot of executives. I think there are two major executives, Noam and someone else, maybe John Jumper or someone, maybe two or three, that have left the Google Deep Mind in the last week. And I think the reason is because there are a few reasons, but I think the primary reason is Gemini 3.5 Pro, which is their current latest model that I think will release this week, the last week of June, is completed. They're preparing for a launch. They already launched 3.5 Flash in late May during Google I/O's event, and now it's alive. I think what the issue with there's an ecosystem of AI products. So there's obviously OpenAI, first mover advantage. Consumers love ChatGPT, but developers love Codex. There's Anthropic. Consumers love Claude, developers love Claude Code. So you have these both consumer and enterprise products. These companies are making a significant amount of revenue from the enterprise API. Why? Because developers love these tools. They're best designed for agentic coding capabilities. So good at agentic coding that programmers no longer need to read or write code. The AI can actually execute all of it on its own. And it has the ability to have multiple agents. So it's really powerful. It gets expensive at a certain point in time. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy when it came to Fable 5's release in like the first or second week of June, I think, June 5th or June 9th. And it was a pretty big deal because it's very strong in coding. Now that's important to note because if you're not a coder or a developer, you have no idea about the capabilities of these models. You're really just looking at the consumer aspect. Now I actually think that Anthropic's Claude has a beautiful interface when it comes to consumer AI chat interface. Beautiful font, great interface design, user experience, etc. The interesting element is that I haven't used ChatGPT for like 2.5, 3 years. I do everything in Gemini. I use Gemini in Chrome. I use Gemini in Google Workspace. I use Gemini for AI mode, AI search on my phone. I use all of their enterprise applications from Anti-Gravity, the Jules agent, AI Studio, API keys, Google Cloud, the whole vertical stack. I'm like completely integrated. Now, why do I use it? Because even though I'm not a coder and I write a lot of code via these agents, I index more for multimodal. And that is a completely different capacity that the other models simply cannot do. So the example I give most people is I use voice quite often now. I prefer it as my preferred way to do communication, both preferably in person or on the phone or on Zoom. But now I can speak to the computer, I can execute code, I can create content, I can do a whole variety of things via voice. And the only two good voice AIs, from my perspective, was Grok Voice and then Gemini Live. Recently, I've been using WhisperFlow because it's a fantastic tool because it has much more multi-application use cases versus those two. But Grok Voice is very quick, very fast, has more characteristics that are personable, and the speed is a key element that Elon and his team at XAI have really indexed for. And then Gemini Live just works on my phone and my desktop beautifully, and it has context from my chat history. With Gemini, particularly, I use video and imaging quite often. I obviously do a lot of screenshots. I do a lot of browser use agents. I use a variety of things that require a large context window at a very low rate. Otherwise, it can get very expensive. Anthropic does not index for that. They do not focus on the multimodal capabilities. They don't have the ability. They have limited context window unless you have enterprise API, and it's still better at coding than it is for anything else. So if you're a programmer, it is absolute like godsend. But if you're not a programmer, you're paying a premium for something you don't know how to maximize. Like I would be paying a premium for something I don't know how to maximize. I don't have I have no idea what ChatGPT is good at. I think they have good products and they do really well. And I heard Codex is very good, which is extremely competitive to Claude Code. So I would say that's what they're good at. But I've never used it, so I don't know personally. So anyway, that is why I moved to the Gemini. But these top lieutenants that are leaving DeepMind, they may have been leaving DeepMind because they may want to go work on more agentic coding capabilities because we're really on the frontier of some of those things from what I've read in terms of benchmarking and production and output. But if you don't want to work on multimodal, then Gemini is actually not your ecosystem because they do really good at video generation, audio, podcasts. They do everything. And if that's not your cup of tea, then you got to move to somewhere else that where the modes and models are more aligned to your where you want to work the most. Now, I think Gemini 3.5 will be good, but Pro will be good, but it will not be as good in coding as the current competitors. And as much as I love anti-gravity, it is designed for someone like me as opposed to a coder who would probably use a terminal or an application such as Claude Code in the terminal, CLI, or Codex, or another tool like that. So I think it's interesting to observe. I think this trend will just, top 3, top 4. I think Grok Build is going to be competitive in a few months. I saw that an open source competitor for coding has become available, and they think they'll be as good as Fable 5 by Q1 2027. So I think this possibility is definitely very competitive. I don't really, at this point, we're so close to the frontier. Unless you're on the cutting edge and you have a deep understanding of how to use these products, I do not see the reason to keep switching models every 3 to 4 months. Because they're so productive from where we were 2 to 3 years ago that if you're just working in the model today in real time, you're just being productive by nature. Most people I don't even think are doing that. So you're ahead if you're using the models. But unless you're working on the cutting edge, R&D, you have to work on the best technology, build the best software, do etc. I don't know. I think that's why Fable 5 was 2 times more than Opus 4.8, and these other models are very expensive because you do need to justify paying this much for tokens. And I think the cost of tokens will just rise. They will stop subsidizing these costs. It will get more expensive. They will get very good. They'll be worth the 3 to 4 times an employee because they will be doing 3 to 4 times more work per employee. So you will justify paying $100,000, $200,000 a year for specific models because they could produce hundreds of thousands of dollars of literal value in real time, and they take longer to get things done. They have multiple agents doing work, and they're doing work that's extremely either hard or boring, monotonous, whatever. It's just like you don't want to do it. You can spend time doing other things. So I expect the costs to rise. I expect the competition to get more heated, and I expect the models to just continuously get better. So I'm looking forward to it, and I recommend testing all the models. I do use Claude, Opus, and Sonnet once in a while because they are very good for very particular tasks. But if you're not on the cutting edge, I don't think it's worth paying a premium. I think you could just get by with the current models at a great price and just start doing work.